Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our third partnership with the 14th Annual LA Skins Fest. This is also supported by Outside the Box Office, Our Voices, and USC Visions and Voices, the Arts and Humanities Initiative. Tonight, we're going to take a look at 5 exciting short films by Native American filmmakers, followed by a panel discussion that will be moderated by one of our Peter Stark Producing Program MFA candidates, Kapena Baptista. We're going to share all 5 of the films directly through the webinar. And then at the end, we'll start the panel discussion with the filmmakers. And if you'd like to ask a question, please just type it up and put it in the Q&A box in the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your Zoom field. And then when we open it up, we'd like to invite you one by one to become temporary panelists so that you can turn on your video if you'd like to ask your question. Or at the very least, just use your microphone and you can ask it live. So it's been my pleasure over the past couple of evenings with LA Skins Fest to welcome my colleague Stacey Patterson to offer a land acknowledgement, and I'd like to welcome Stacey up now.
Thank you, Alex. And good evening, everybody. My name is Stacey Patterson. My pronouns are she, her, and I come to you as a proud daughter of an enrolled member of the Ojibwe Nation out of White Earth, Minnesota. I also serve as a program manager for the Division of Media Arts and Practice here at the USC School of Cinematic Arts. It is my honor to join the organizers of tonight's event to welcome you and ask that you join me to acknowledge the land on which we work, teach, study, create, build community. For those of us in Los Angeles, in what we call the LA Basin, for all of us who have and will again step foot on a USC campus, this is Tongva land. Now, last time we gathered, there was a question about acknowledging the Chumash. They did indeed inhabit land in California and in Southern California in what is now typically Ventura and Santa Barbara and some as far south as Malibu. But this question about who to acknowledge, and especially for those of you who may be connecting with us from elsewhere or have friends or family from nations other than Tongva, I encourage you to visit nativeland.ca, one of the places that will afford you the opportunity to discover the original people, if you are not one of them yourself, of your home. This brief time that I have with you is not enough to be a full history lesson. I'm not a scholar of all things Indigenous. There are hundreds of federally recognized tribes and pueblos in the United States alone. But I do want to share just a bit about the people who took great care of the land that we now call Los Angeles. Beginning some 3,500 years ago, the Tongva moved into coastal Southern California, inhabiting this area and beyond. They thrived near their 4 sacred mountains and their 4 sacred rivers, including what we call the LA River, that was once wild and free. They developed extensive trade routes with outposts, one of which would become downtown Los Angeles. When the Spanish began to settle in and colonize this area in the 1600s, conflict became inevitable. Violence, disease, and ultimately forced relocation, a policy the US government would take up as well, profoundly altered the lives of Indigenous people. But this, as we know, is not the end of the story. Honoring those who come before us isn't only about the past, it isn't only about history, it certainly isn't about demise. It is hope and resilience and the transfer of knowledge that continues across generations in Native communities today. It is a call for all of us to expand our understanding of Indigenous people. Understand that Tongva, like many Native people everywhere, continue in the present. They strive for self-determination and demand respect for tribal sovereignty and the honoring of long-standing treaties. Like any of us, modern Native people love stories, of all genres across all mediums. So as we acknowledge Tongva land, I ask that we, all of us, Native or not, through the stories that we develop, the research we conduct, the courses that we teach, how we imagine and create a present and a future that is perhaps a bit less colonized and a bit more indigenized. And I hope that in addition to attending programming like tonight, that you will take every opportunity, whenever and wherever it is offered, to attend and participate in Native programming. I thank you for your time and for being here.
Thank you so much, Stacy. It's been wonderful to have Stacy join us for all of this programming, and I look forward to many more nights where we can share this together. I'd love to welcome up Ian Skoriden from the LA Skins Fest to give you a little bit more of an introduction to the festival itself. So Ian, it's all yours.
Hey, hi, Alex. Thanks again. And Stacy, that was wonderful. Thank you for that. Yeah, the LA Skins Fest is a Native American film festival. Also, it's an arts program. We offer year-round art development for adults and youth in the Native American community. This year is our 14th year. It's coming up next week, the 18th to the 22nd. And I really want to thank the filmmakers tonight. We've celebrated these films in the past, and these are really fantastic narratives. And I think one of the best things about these films, it really shows the diversity in the Native community. You know, a lot of people really have a kind of monolithic sense of who we are and what we represent, when in actuality, you know, we are very different. We bring a lot of different ideas and opinions to the table, and these films really exemplify that. So Alex, thank you again for partnering with us and showcasing these films and filmmakers tonight.
Thank you so much, Ian. And now I'd like to turn it over to Kapena Baptista, who's going to be your host throughout the discussion after the films. Kapena is one of our brilliant MFA students in the Peter Stark producing program. So welcome, Kapena.
My name is Kapena. I am Native Hawaiian and Mescalero Apache, and I'm so excited to be part of another Native American film showcase in partnership with LA Skins Fest. It's just been such an honor to do this. I mean, you don't get very many schools doing this kind of programming, so you are all in for such a treat. So the program this evening will run roughly around 70 minutes, and we will begin with Viva Diva, which will run for about 15 minutes. Mud, which will run for about 11 minutes, Chickens, which will run for about 13 minutes, Lycanphobic, which will run for about another 13 minutes, and then Hi Hawaii, which will run for about 17 minutes. So we will rejoin after the program and have a moderated Q&A with our wonderful filmmakers who decided to come join us this evening.
And if everyone who's out there from the filmmaking community wants to just quickly turn on your cameras to give everyone a quick wave to the audience, we'll get started.
Yay.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you in 70 minutes.
Welcome everyone. What a great program that was. If you're at home, please give a good round of applause for everyone here. That was absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to all of you. Beautiful. So if our filmmakers could turn their cameras on. Great, great. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we'll break into just a quick, roughly 35 minute Q&A, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. So I just wanted to give you all each a moment to introduce yourself and take a moment to kind of explain how you came into filmmaking. I always love to ask filmmakers this question. So unfortunately, Daniel Flores, the director of Viva Diva, was unable to join us tonight. So we'll be sort of going in order of the screening. So Shantine, did you wanna start?
Hi, my name is Shandine Tome. I am a filmmaker from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I am Dene Navajo. And what was the other question was how I got into filmmaking.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess from like a young age, I feel like everybody has a story, like using like a camcorder and like making their own films and that sort of thing. So yeah, my brothers and I would make and mimic films and like create costumes and have like a blast doing it, and didn't really know that it could be a job until like much later. So yep.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, we're moving on to the chickens team here. So Brian and Brian?
Yeah, Brian and Brian. Brian, you go first.
No, Brian, you go first.
Okay, fine, I'll go first. I'm Brian Montgomery. I'm the director of Chickens, and what was I going to say? I started filmmaking in middle school and in high school, and then went to college and did it, and started doing horror movies, and wanted to make movies that were about social change. So I had to figure out how to do both of them and intertwine that, and that's how Chickens came about. And yeah, it's me.
My name is Brian Ramian. My family's from San Juan Capistrano here in California. We are a Hashiman. I got into filmmaking very late in life. In college, I started taking some filmmaking and acting classes, and kind of led me to LA and running around this town for a while, and met this guy, Brian, and got this film, part of this film a few years back, and have been on this really crazy, wonderful, wild ride with Brian. Always got to say thank you for having me. And Ian, thanks for having us as well as USC.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to have you both here. Sienna?
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Hello. I was like ready to like load up, but like, yes, this is hello. Nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Sienna East, Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, born and raised in LA. The way I got into filmmaking was I'd always liked storytelling, but in high school I had like this music video class, and I got really into like making music videos. And I thought like, oh my God, like I really like erotic thrillers. Like I'd seen like 20 Minutes of Basic Instinct, and I was like, that's what it's about. But as I got older, I realized that's not what I was into. I just like making everyone uncomfortable. And so that's kind of what my journey was there.
We'll have a lot to talk about later, so excited for that. And finally, Ty, how are you?
Hey, hello, my kako. My name is Ty Sanga. I directed the short Hi Hawaii. I got into filmmaking really late in the game compared to everybody else. I was watching documentaries up in college, and I watched this documentary called Sand Island Stories, which was about the evictions of Native Hawaiians. And I was in class watching it, emotional, tearing, like motivated to make change. And I was like, dude, this is what I needed to do. I wanted to make movies ever since then. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'll just kind of go through each film as they went through in the program. So Shandine, it's you and me, starting off with Mud. So I really felt this film. So could you tell me a little bit about where the idea of it came from and what your relationship is to the story and why you decided to tell it?
Yeah, I guess this film came about in kind of I guess an interesting way, in the sense that I guess addiction is kind of prevalent within my own family, and there was I guess an event that happened that kind of sparked the idea for it, and really the idea was stemmed from, I guess, what does clanship mean in Navajo, which is Hushklishni, which is Mud Clan, and then the opposite side of Mud. And so I was trying to think about like what is like the difference between like somebody and their modern interpretation of what a clan is, or like just like a modern interpretation of what a Navajo person is, which tends to be those stereotypes like alcoholics, those who are like heavily addicted, who don't have control in their lives. And then I guess the opposite side, which I know of, and I know that like my own family, even though they did have like these problems that they were suffering with, that they really like taught me they had the capacity to love and care and teach me stuff and pass on their knowledge in a way that still, I guess, like I didn't understand like why people were always labeling. So the idea came from that, was like, why do I feel the sensation of like love and belonging and care and family when it comes to like Navajo ideologies, and why do other people like see like alcoholics? And so it came through a story that followed Ruby, and just like really showing like kind of like a quiet character who's often overlooked. People don't really care about like really anybody quiet. And so I tried to make it, I guess, my perspective of some of my own family members, but really just kind of like creating these situations in my mind that kind of played with the idea of belonging and I guess the surrealism of like what mud is, and like how it's sticky and you can't wash it off, or like it's always there. And so it, like, to me, that was like the symbol of like addiction. Like she can't get away from it, and it like kind of consumes her in like a really horrible way. But yeah, that's kind of how the idea came about. And
yeah, I mean, I was about to ask you about the mud, right? It's so visceral, right? Like I was so like kind of jarred by just all the mud like that's on her, in her, coming out of her body, right? I mean, it's so interesting you talk about that as being a symbol of addiction, right? I mean, in a way, I really kind of interpreted that as having to do everything with her clan, right? And in a way, like her own identity, and like being unable to wash away one's identity because it's literally one's body, right? So, I mean, I was wondering if you could, I mean, for an audience that might be unfamiliar with clanship in Navajo culture, like how might you explain that to folks?
Yeah, so clanship is matrilineal. So you get a clan that comes from your mother, and it kind of goes back. So it goes back to your grandmother and your great grandmother. So Hushklishni is actually my clan. And so it's my mom's clan, my grandma's clan, and then I have my dad's side. But you basically have like 4 clans, and they kind of put you in a place of like my relation to like where I am, but also my relation to like my family. To me, clanships are all about relations, and that to me is like more of like belonging and feeling like you belong. And I guess like kind of what you just said, like an identity that you can't like get rid of. Like it's so ingrained in you, and you kind of sometimes are fighting against it, but then you're also like really, I guess like you have to be aware of it in order to feel that sense of belonging. And sometimes if you forget about it, then you're kind of lost, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the part that really got me was the sink scene, and she's literally washing it away. I was like, whoa, that hit me. So I do want to talk about Ruby a little bit. So Ruby's character is like native motherhood, unlike anything I've ever seen on screen. And aside from finding out that like her husband is dead, we don't necessarily know what transpired, right? Like we don't know who's at fault. There's a moment where she and Forrest's character are just kind of pointing fingers at each other. So we don't really know what caused such a strained relationship with her son, right? And I think in a lot of ways, the fact that we don't know is really quite powerful, because I find that a lot of issues within Native communities in particular don't necessarily have a single cause, right? It tends to be a plethora of things, right? But I was really wondering what your take on Ruby is and why you think she is the way she is.
Well, I guess like I don't want to cast blame onto Ruby in any way. My hope to like make this film and try to like understand the character with like the writing of it, and I guess just like the creation of the character, also with Trini King, who brought a lot to it. And I guess it was just more of like, she is a person who has her own responsibilities. She wants her own responsibilities. She wants to live a life, but somewhere along the way, those like connection points aren't happening. And she, to me, like thrives off of family, and because it's just so disjointed at the moment of like the film, like it feels like everything is taken away from her. even though it's not that bad. Like, she has a son who cares for her. She has like Harold, the guy in the car, who is her cousin,
Right.
Who also cares for her. And it's like these different forms of like who these characters are when it comes to addiction.
Right.
And I guess like the relation that people have, like whether it's like the son who is like almost like a caretaker, or the uncle who in my mind had a past of addiction but kind of doesn't want to bring it up with Ruby, but is like really trying to reach out and I guess create like a relationship there. And then Ruby, who feels like I guess that like nobody cares about her, even though you see all of these characters like really caring for her. It's just like that moment like where she actually understands it and it like sinks in. And I guess like it's just those tiny connection points that aren't hitting for her, and that makes her feel like she is lost and that she doesn't belong, even though she does.
Right. There's that moment with her and her cousin where he's like, hang in there. Right. It's a beautiful film, Shandine. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for like your films. They're really great. And it was great to see like, I guess like the vast different kinds of like Native films out there. So thank you.
It's great, isn't it? I mean, this is the third installment of our film program like this. And I'm just like in awe of just the variety of what I've seen. Like, it's beautiful. Thank you all of you. So moving on to the chickens team. So Brian squared. How y'all doing? So for first things first, like this is obviously a super timely piece, like especially in the wake of all the racial justice uprisings that happened after the murder of George Floyd. And the film was obviously made prior to all of that happening. And I think it's very telling how this content remains relevant, you know, despite having been made before everything that just happened in this year. So could you tell me a little bit more about how this film came about when it did, and why you wanted to participate in a conversation about police violence against Black people, particularly through the medium of film?
You know, the movie, when I first like wrote it, I was just trying to write a thriller. And I remember writing the film and being like, yeah, this is something that scares me. And I didn't think of it at all as being a conversation piece about like or being a zeitgeist at all. And I just was like, oh, let me just write this movie. And then I wrote it, and then I was like, oh, I'll do another draft. I feel like there's some more meat here in these characters. And after so long, it was like, oh, I'm really like, we're really talking about something right now. And I think getting together the cast and the crew and like starting to make the movie, for some reason, more and more, we were just having this open discussion about like what was going on in society. And the movie, what's wild about it is that like I had released it, and you know, like people had watched it, but the movie over time has become like more and more relevant. And which is insane. Like it's been playing at film festivals for now 3 years. And
wow.
Yeah, and it's
congratulations though. I mean, that's great.
You know, I just got an email today that like we're gonna play in Europe next year. And I'm like, okay, like come on down. So it's wild, you know. But what's great about it is that it's a movie that will, for like I hope not forever be relevant, but it'll always be reminiscent of the time we're living in right now. Yeah, and I kind of zoned off your question a little bit, but the main reason why like wanting to make the story and everything else, like and circling back around about how I was just making a thriller, like I've had run-in with the police, and it just kind of like seems normal to me, and it's not a great thing. And so I was showing like what is scary to me and what is something that terrifies me. And it's like every time I see the police when I'm driving down the street, I kind of get like a little stiff in my back, because I had a cousin who was murdered by the police. I've had like, you know, all these things happen. I've been pulled over before and been scared for my life. So it just felt like, okay, I make horror movies. Let's make a movie about something I'm scared of. Yeah.
Right. So Brian Ramian, so I had no idea you were going to be here today. So I'm actually really excited to talk to you about this. What was it like playing a cop? And would you be offended if I wanted to say that I really want to punch you? I mean, great job, really great job playing that. But what was it like? What was it like doing that? That's just like, so I was visceral reaction to your character.
Yeah, every time I see that movie, I vow to never watch it again. I hate that character. So it's always, it just is so stomach churning to watch. From the beginning of that venture, it was like reading that text, and of course as an actor trying to get work, and then reading that work and getting invited to that audition, and then kind of going through the process of what that looks like, and then meeting Brian and doing the work in that room with him, and being able to start a dialogue with Brian of what this piece was going to be, like what it meant, and like having these words come out of my mouth there's frightening, it's scary, and I hate those words. And so it's kind of talking about like how it was shaping, and this kind of idea, it was like he said, it was like this idea of what he wanted it to be, and then going through the process of making the film. And it was I find a lot of joy as an actor playing very dark characters and like getting into that. But it was difficult. It was challenging. It was challenging to be on set, and like being in a set that was very warm and welcoming to the material that we were doing. But the things that were coming out of my mouth were so just invasive and offensive and crazy. And then, like Brian was saying, like going through this crazy arc of a journey, and who knows where it's at this point, and what's going on with in our society and in our culture, and what it all means. And it's nice to participate in that conversation and contribute to it, but it's still scary to see and be a part of. You never know how it's going to land on whoever's watching it.
Right. I mean,
please feel free to punch that guy in the face.
right. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I found the film hard to watch at times, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, like, the campy kind of comic book, like boom pow, like aesthetic to it is something I haven't seen in a film piece that like talks about this kinds of stuff, right? And like it's definitely a choice, right? And I think that's something that like really makes you stand out as a filmmaker, right? It's a kind of like the spoonful of sugar with the medicine, right? So to speak. So like, can you talk about those aesthetic choices and why you decided to put them inside?
Totally. And I love the reference of the sugar, the medicine, the sugar. I always say Flintstone gummies is
right. Yes.
But man, I like pulp. I like movies that are just like slimy, crappy exploitation movies. And I always have ever since I was younger. I love subversive and transgressive pieces. And I always wanted to make those movies. And I was like, man, I was in high school. Like, why can't I make these violent films that I like to watch? And then the older I got and I started to do that, I was like, these movies aren't very good. And I was thinking, why aren't they that good? And I knew that like, I was like political, and I'm a very like active like speaker in what I believe in. And I was like, man, like I think these movies don't work because they are completely opposite of what I believe in. So like, how do I make entertaining films that are also like saying something? And so that's when I created the branding Alternative Horror. When we take horror movies and we take current events and turn them into horror movies. And so like my style, like before I started putting themes like this into my movies, was very pulpy. And I was like, this is an entertaining movie. This is that. And so with this movie, if you take out the color, you take out the editing and the way it is, it's a pretty drab movie.
Dark, right? Very dark.
Dark. And I just wanted something digestible, Yeah. I get a lot of influences from like Brian De Palma and a lot of like horror filmmakers and stuff. So that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was gonna ask you, like, so one of the classes that we're taking right now, one of our professors was telling us about horror and how it's such a great medium to insert social commentary, and how you could really do it for, quite a low budget and really kind of expect a high return on it if you do it well, right? So I was wondering like what your thoughts on that might be, and how, you imagine yourself as a filmmaker kind of continuing that tradition of like using horror as a medium, or a Trojan horse, so to speak, of social commentary.
Totally, man. So I plan on continuing to do what I'm doing now, but at the same time, like in the topic of horror, I took a monster theory class in college, and that class was talking about how every single like horror movie that you could bring up, someone can tell you what was going on at the time that movie was a reflection of. And like Dawn of the Dead, the most recent remake was really about immigration in this country, which is like a wild thing. And like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula was really about like the AIDS epidemic, and he was making a documentary about it at the same time. So I think you can always make a parallel to what's going on and what people's fear is, like in the real world. How do we translate that but make it like not drab? So like for me, I feel like I'm always going to continue to make movies, and as the budgets get bigger, you have a little less of a social voice that you can have. But I think that I will always continue to make some sort of allegory about what's happening in the times, because it's just important to me to always talking about something.
And Brian Ramian, did have you acted in a horror film before? I mean, and do you plan on taking another horror gig after this?
I have worked in horror flicks. They're easier to make. The budgets are, that you can make those stories on. So yeah, I have worked in them. I don't know. I don't know this working on this film with Brian. And it's been a few years now. It really changed quite a bit on how I look at the decisions I make and what I want to say as an artist. And I don't know if I don't know, one script to the next, you kind of just you read it and make a decision. But I would never be adverse to it. But who knows?
Wonderful. Brian's, thank you so much for coming.
There's oh wait.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, wait. We're answering the questions in the Q&A afterwards. Right?
Yeah. We'll get the audience involved after. So yeah, just hang tight. So Sienna, hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm a little cold. How are you?
Same here. So lycanphobic. This was hilarious. I mean, I was just cracking up back here. Like you didn't want to hear the noises that were coming out of my body. It was
that's what I want.
I mean, it was. I mean, I honestly can't imagine how anyone could have came up with that, but you did, and I want to know how. Like, I feel like there's definitely a story behind this, and werewolves, vampires, orgies. Like, there's a story here, and I want to hear it. What is it?
The boring part of the story is that I went to NYU, and you compete to make short films there. And I was struggling to think of a small short idea, and I had kind of like a vague, it started out as like a man seeking woman sample that I vaguely outlined and whatever. And it was a contained idea because I like TV the most. And so I was like, okay, so what if I took this and translated it and just made it my own thing? And as I was working on it and developing it, because I was like, okay, we're going to talk about like bisexuality and sexuality and stuff like that. I was like figuring out myself. I had a boyfriend who I had broken up with, who I had cheated on. I was experimenting with my own sexuality and trying to figure things out. And I was really puzzling out like fidelity and sexuality and emotional relationships. And I thought a really funny way to talk about that would be to have someone be worried that someone was going to have sex with the dog. And what does sex mean? And what is the connection of it? And does that matter? And does it not matter? Because I had like met people, like I was experimenting, and people were like, oh, so it's not cheating if you do it this way. I'm like, no, I've cheated. It's still cheating. Like I've cheated. I know what cheating's like. It's not good. And so I wanted to be aware that like that was bad. And like, that wasn't something that sleeping with the dog was cheating. He wasn't, but it would have been. And I thought it'd be really funny to do the dog. I originally wanted a really big dog. Because I thought that would have been more visual for the audience, but that dog dropped out like 2 days before. So then my friend's really small dog, which is a very different emotional moment and a different discomfort. It's less realistic, but I still made a lot of people uncomfortable, and the shadow puppets made people uncomfortable. So I think I got people into a space because I like to get into spaces of discomfort.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of that. I mean, could like speak more about that? I mean, like what about making audiences uncomfortable, in your view, is like good for, I guess, getting a message across?
I mean, there's two things. I think tension is a huge part of comedy. Hannah Gadsby talks a lot about her stand-up, and so discomfort creates tension. And so you either get the relief of you see the horrible thing, or you don't see the horrible thing. And I did both in this, which I was really happy about. But the other part is that I like to talk about things that make people uncomfortable in the most uncomfortable way, because I think we get the best conversation out of it. I'm really not interested in talking about things in a way where someone's like, okay, I can. Discomfort gets us to a real place of conversation and discussion, and I think also like is the most fun. And I never want to be afraid to like go all the way, because I think sometimes when you don't go all the way, people aren't uncomfortable, they can feel that. And so like I remember when I pitched this, like I was very aware of making sure it felt visceral. And so I'm talking and there's a class and there's teachers and they're picking out a film, like, and then she goes to the werewolf orgy and it's just like, and then so I was doing this in my pitch because like I needed to get the emotion and the mood across, because it's visceral, it's intimate. And I think especially when you're talking about sex is visceral, it's intimate. And I never want to talk about it in a way that doesn't feel both funny and gross and strange, because it is. It's also good, but it's also funny, gross, and strange.
I loved your bit about how it's about sexuality in a lot of ways, right? I mean, lycanphobia becomes like a stand-in for all kinds of other kind of phobias. So like homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, whatever, like you can just kind of insert that in and like really like get an idea of what it was about. So, I mean, and what I liked about it more is that like, it's easy to get kind of bogged down in the negative parts of it, right? If we're talking about homophobia or transphobia, right? It's like, it's really easy to get kind of sad, but this was hilarious, right? And like but you still got the same message, right? Like you're lycanphobic, and then they apologize and they talk it out, right? But I was wondering, like, considering, kind of like this theme of sexuality, right? Like what's kind of the underlying message you were trying to kind of convey within our main character's lycanphobia?
That sexuality doesn't change fidelity, and fidelity is important, and honesty is the biggest part of fidelity. That is, I think, the most important part, and that we can make a lot of preconceived notions on people depending on what their sexuality or even their sexual history in general. Chasing Amy is one of my favorite movies, and the way that it discusses that. And so that honesty is like the most important part. And I think what makes it like not like depressing is that it's a stupid, idiot, dumb girl. And I love writing about dumb girls, because you watch it, oh, I'm a dumb girl. I've also made these choices, and it allows an audience to like not be there and be like evil. It allows them to look at themselves and go, oh, have I been an idiot? Did I say something stupid? Which is really important to me, to make people say, did I say something stupid?
Right. So you mentioned that you had made this film as a student, right? So there are definitely students in the audience here right now. I mean, do you have any tips for, I guess, like student filmmaking and what to look out for, how to not get screwed over, I guess, and how to really be a little bit more professional in our films?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part is working with people that you value and trust. A lot of people will get really caught up in like, because I saved up money, and then you get a little bit of money if they choose you and you get to have the cameras. That's how NYU works. But the most important part is the crew, and having a crew you value and trust. And NYU, we all work on each other's crews. We all help each other out and stuff like that. But sometimes people get really excited. They'll be like, I have to have this special camera, or I need this special sound person, or someone that you don't even know. And then that person drops out days before, and you're like, oh God, figure it out. Everyone on my set made my set so much easier, because they are people I knew, I trusted, I had worked with, and I could rely on. And people I trusted to do their artwork. And I also didn't like another thing people will do is be like, oh, you're not doing this well enough, you're not doing this good enough, like for someone who's helping you out for free on a student film. And then I got demoted to art PA on someone's film because someone was mad at me, and I was like, I'm just here, like what? And so like everyone was doing their best because we all trusted each other, we all liked the story, we all were like good friends, and it made all the difference and eliminated so much stress, just having like people I knew and people I trusted. That's what made this happen.
That is such great advice, and I hope the students in the audience really take note of that. I'm gonna write that down. Thank you so much, Sita. You're so hilarious. I'm so glad to be talking to you.
you.
All right. So lastly, hi Hawaii. Ty, how are you?
Hey, aloha. How are you?
Good, good, good. So wow, I mean, so I actually heard about this film a while ago. I think it was made in 2018, right?
2018, yes, correct.
Yeah, I mean, I get so excited about any films made about Hawaii. I mean, I think, I mean, like as a Kanaka myself, it's just like we hear stories about, you know, our kingdom and what happened to it. I've been hearing these stories since I was a kid, right? And I found this film to be continuing a kind of long and storied tradition of radical truth telling, right? And like what really happened to Hawaii from the perspective of Hawaiians. So like, could you tell us about, you know, like how you came into this film and what the production process was like?
Yeah, this project was a long journey. I had the idea kind of in my brain for a few years. And it's, you know, it's historical fiction, right? So like the theft of the flag is fake, but everything around that moment is real, right? The overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy, these people coming into Hawaii and imprisoning our queen, all these different things. And I knew we only had a budget or barely a budget to do a short film. And I wanted to cram all this history into this story, and which was very difficult to kind of figure out. But, you know, like it was a long journey to kind of massage that. And, you know, the funny thing that happened is that when Trump won his election back in 2016, like this is when the movie finally, like it was an epiphany. Like I figured out how to answer this problem. And it was kind of like the kick in the butt. It's like, now we need to tell our stories and no one else is going to silence this type of thing, a moment for me. And so that kind of helped me a lot to tell this narrative. It was really because, you know, I mostly do documentaries, and in my documentaries, I travel around the islands and I talk to a lot of our folks, and a lot of our kupunas, our elders, you know, they're still hurt by what happened in the overthrow. Even the youngsters, actually, even like some of my people in my generation, they're like imprisoned by that moment. You know, they're trapped by that moment, and rightfully so. You know, we can't forget. But like the stories of our patriots that happened during that time was never told. And so that's kind of how I found that angle into this story, that it needed to be a theft. It needs to be a young Hawaiian boy. Sorry, my little kid is running around. Young Hawaiian boy that is recruited to protect the flag. And then the flag became the symbol of the entire kingdom. So yeah, it was kind of a long journey, but it worked out.
Yeah. So, I mean, so for those unfamiliar, could you kind of share a little bit about the cultural significance and importance of the Hawaii today? Yeah.
You know, so our flag it's a kingdom flag, right? So it was actually created by King Kamehameha the first. I mean, so he was the unifier of our Hawaiian Islands. He was our first king that unified all the islands, and it stayed that kingdom for I don't know how many years. But he created a flag because he saw that other countries are using flags as communications to kind of show who they are as a kingdom, and it became an identity for our people. This story actually was inspired by this. People don't know if it's actually true. We've all kind of heard these legends that when the overthrow happened, the people involved, Dole and everyone else involved, they called themselves the Committee of Safety because they were protecting themselves. But they once they overthrew the queen, they lowered the flag and ripped it into pieces to show like what they've accomplished. Finally, they've tried for many years to overthrow Hawaii. And when that moment happened, so that's unclear if it really happened or if it did happen. We kind of use that as a symbol for our film because it embodied what was actually happening within our kingdom. It became fractured. But after that moment, a lot of our quilters like came out and they started quilting all these flags so that people could have them in their homes, so that they would, you know, hang them in their homes and still be able to sleep under the kingdom flag, even though we're no longer allowed to fly it anymore. And that became a thing. That became a very patriotic thing for Native Hawaiians. Today, we still wave that flag around.
I feel like I don't know a single Hawaiian family that doesn't have a Hawaii in their home. You know, like it's a very powerful symbol. So, so out of all the films we've seen tonight, yours is the only period piece, right? And I love period pieces. I'm a big history nerd. And what I love about seeing period pieces about Hawaii in particular is that we never get to see period pieces about Hawaii. You know, we only really get to see Hawaii in the context of like the American tourist imaginary, right? This island paradise where people go to get married, right? So I was wondering, like, what was it like to make a period piece and also work with historical advisors in particular? How did you find them, and what was it like working with them?
Yeah, you know, I knew it was going to be an ambitious journey to tell this film because um, period pieces. Oh my God, man! Like you're talking
Right.
about wardrobe,
Right.
locations, but it's all been the relationships that I've been building ever since I became a filmmaker. You know, we work within the communities, and they understand our stories. It's funny when you tell someone you're doing a film about Hawaii from outside of Hawaii, people
Right.
only know
Right.
like kahiko, like rowing our malos and half naked people running around with spears, or they see contemporary.
Right.
They don't see that period of our kingdom
Right.
because those are stories were removed from our history, you know. So when I told everybody that, look, we're going to do this film, it's very ambitious. We have no budget, but everyone kind of just jumped on board and they kind of donated. Actually, everyone donated their time and their resources to tell this story. So in some ways, it was pretty easy to make this film. Even the palace, filming at the palace.
Right.
That's one, you know, it's a big symbol that still exists here today of our kingdom. They knew, you know, we had that relationship already, and you know, I pitched the film. I told them what we wanted to do, and they understood our message and how much we love the palace and how much we were trying to carry on their story. And so they basically welcomed us, and they let us film from the basement all the way to the rooftop.
That's incredible.
Which
Wow.
is really rare. Yeah.
Honor.
So, which is very grateful.
How did you feel in this space? I mean, I can't imagine what that was like.
You know, it was funny, you know, because like, so like it's very, you know, they try to preserve the palace, you know, so you're not allowed to walk in with your shoes, you know, you have to wear booties or yeah, wear slippers or go barefoot. Actually, they gave us an option to go barefoot.
Wow.
And, you know, and usually on film sets, you don't want to go barefoot because, you know, you get hurt. But a lot of the crew, who were majority was Hawaiian, Native Hawaiians, they decided to go barefoot because they wanted to put their feet on the same floor that our ancestors were on.
Chicken
you know,
skin.
just just to be able to feel that. Our queens walked through those halls, you know. I mean, even on the grounds, that was the grounds where the flag was actually lowered and the American flag was raised. So all of those moments, they wanted to be in there. And for me, film is a healing process. Mostly for me too. Like I heal as a Native Hawaiian, as a filmmaker. But seeing everybody else go through that process as well was rewarding in many ways. And even screening here in Hawaii, having the young kids watch this film, I mean, they get all excited, you know, because it's a genre movie, right? It's a heist movie, so they get into it, and they're learning their history too. Because sometimes some of this stuff, they hear it in the history books, but when they see it on screen, it means something different. Like there actually is pride now with them. Like it seems so removed when you just read it in a book and you're like, okay, that happened to our people, and we don't know it. Like now or today. But for us, like, or for me, it meant a lot to have them understand that moment now. And like now when they see the flag, it's a greater pride in it. I did a little artsy thing at the end. When you know, like, because most people don't know the story of Hawaii or the kingdom. But when he's putting the flag in that cave, he's ideally, like, I'm putting it in every viewer that's watching this film. So now they have the flag with them to wherever they go. So now they have to tell the story of Hawaii, or they know the story of Hawaii. So it's their responsibility to help share our story. So yeah.
That's so beautiful. Tai mahalo nui oe. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so that concludes the moderated portion of our Q&A. I'd like to open it up to audience questions. So Alex, if you could bring some of the audience members up.
Definitely. So I'll put the order of people that I'm going to call on in the chat so that people can get ready if you want to turn on your video. But we'll start with Terry Chavaria. So I'm going to move you over, Terry, and then you can choose to turn on your video or just your mic if you're not camera ready.
That didn't go quite as smoothly as I thought it would. Okay, here we go. All right, Terry's joining us.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wanting to thank all of you guys for the films. They were I really enjoyed watching all of them. And I just had that comment for Shandine, you know, just watching your film, it really, I guess, resonated with me. I'm Mud Clan from Santa Clara, Pueblo. And before even like really knowing what your film was about, it really just touched me, and I could really just connect to your, I guess, the images that you were trying to portray with that. And it just really touched me, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to watch everybody's films, and it means a lot that you say that, and it's so cool to hear the connection of different kinds of clans and how there's other mud clans in different tribes. It's really great.
Okay, I'm bringing over Krista Martone.
Hi, I actually had a question about the ending of Shadin. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I'm so sorry. Film. Was there a symbolism to the kids leaving at the end in the wash?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the idea for the whole like beginning portion of the film with the wash and the end of the film with the wash was, I guess, to kind of show how the story kind of transcends just the characters, like just Ruby, her son, and the uncle, and it goes past that. And for myself, like being a kid out on Navajo Nation, my grandma had a wash right next to her house, and we always, my cousins and I always used to play inside of it. And so it was like we would find things, like we would find like cars down there, or like articles of clothing, and you kind of like wonder like whose were these, like where are they now, whose lives were these? And so I guess it's kind of just more of like a personal touch, but more so that like these kids are like moving forward.
Thank you. I grew up on the Navajo reservation, and my mom still lives out there, and my grandmother, so I can completely relate to that wash feeling, running around and finding like old cans and just old pottery and just cars even. So thank you for that.
Okay, let's go out to we have Tracy.
Hi, so I had a comment about seeing this film, and I just thought it was really interesting about perceptions and fear people have. And I thought it was actually really important that she asked the question, because then it begins a dialogue. And then, but my other question was about, was for both Brians. There they are, they're together. And about the use of the deaf woman at the very ending. I thought it was interesting that it was a woman teenager and that she had a hearing aid, and I wonder if there was any symbolism to that, or was it just kind of like, you know, like camp or something? I'm not sure exactly what the right word is, but I found that interesting.
Yeah. So the reason why we decided to put a deaf character in the role, and like we casted a deaf person, was because we wanted to symbolize having somebody who couldn't speak but still had a voice. And so her thing is that she has a decision to make in the back room, and it's the only, like, she can do it. So it's her being able to voice and do something about the the criminal activity that's happening. And it's just symbolic for everyone having a voice with their phone and being able to do something. It was just symbolic.
Thanks.
Yes.
Also, thank you.
Okay, let's go out to Roger.
Hello, can you hear me? Am I
Yes,
hello?
we can hear you.
Testing. Oh, okay. Hey, I'm a filmmaker from Canada, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I guess as a filmmaker, I would just like to know which film would you recommend? One of your favorites or one of your influential? Which filmmaker or which film would you recommend to other filmmakers they should check out?
If everyone's waiting, everyone's going to hate my answer, so I'll say it real fast. No, whatever. I'm saying what I'm going to say. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, I think is absolutely incredible. It has an amazing central relationship. It's super funny, and it's an amazing discussion with an incredible character flaw. And I've read a lot about it being about the Bush era politics and what that meant in America. And it's one of those, I mean, maybe I resonate with, because it's one of those movies that a lot of people, I think, laugh and really funny, but don't actually think about the incredibly political discussion the movie's having. And so, an incredible central relationship. So Talladega Nights, Ballad of Ricky Bobby.
Thank you. I have not seen that one yet. Anyone else want to recommend the film?
Sure. My favorite movie is Boogie Nights, and that's like a movie I think everybody should see. But on a more like streamlined, I think everyone should watch The Fifth Element, because it is the best blockbuster ever made, and it's how you make a big movie still like have meaning and like still have characters with so much depth, even though they say very little, and it's just a perfect movie, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I am gonna recommend Seven Samurai. It seems like a really like from a distance like a very like long kind of boring film, but it's like the most entertaining. Like I thought I was only gonna watch half of it, and then I like was wanting to watch like the like full like 3-4 hours of it. And any Hayao Miyazaki film, particularly Spirited Away.
Thank you very much. Actually, Seven Samurai is a film I say everything I learned about filmmaking, I learned from Seven Samurai. That's what I say. Akira Kurosawa was my top director, and I learned so much about filmmaking and storytelling just from that one film. Thank you for recommending that. Last two guests, do you have a film that you can just
I mean, I do want to echo Akira Kurosawa. I actually have a tattoo of him on my arm. But I'm going to actually recommend a different film. I love the film Shawshank Redemption. I love the dual protagonists and how they both affect each other through their journey. That narrative of hope, you know. I guess that's kind of what I want to do in my films. I guess that's why I'm pushing it on you guys. But also that pain and struggle within the world that we live in. That film, I love it.
Right on. Thank you. I guess, Brian, do you have a film you want to? I'm just asking everyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Man, Shawshank Redemption. Ty, man, you said it. Great use for characters. I'm a big fan of character-driven films, and I do enjoy like the cinematography of film. So I would just push you right down Quentin Tarantino and Wes Anderson's any one of the films, especially their earlier films.
All right, thank you. That was my question. Thank you all for sharing.
Okay, let's go out to Benjamin with the last question.
Hey, this is more of a comment, but Sienna, I noticed that was the guy from Grey's Anatomy who played the werewolf in your film.
Yes, that is Alex Landy. That's the one thing. I get comments on YouTube and people are like, oh, it's Dr. What's his doctor name? But yes, that is the guy from Grey's Anatomy.
What was that like working with him?
Okay, so this was before any of that was happening, and I had open call for everything. I wanted to see all different types of actors, and he came in and we all just fell in love with him. We were like, this is the guy, this is the dream guy. Like, it's got me, my two producers were all like, my one producer, he was like, I'm in love with him. My other producer, she's like, I'm in love with him. I was in love with him. And so he was really funny, but also like, he just had that kind of like, there was something almost like classical about him. And so it was really great working with him because he was just game. Like, outside of auditioning him and meeting him, he was super game. I was like, you gotta run over there and look real stupid as you run over there. And he's like, I'm gonna trip on this thing. And I'm like, great. And he runs and he falls as he's escaping with his sadness. And he really, like, if you said something, he was like, all right, I'm game, I'm ready to go. And he was just so game. So we fell in love with him, and then he showed up and he was just like ready to go. And so, and you know, the character's barking and he's like, all right, let's do it. So he was just super game and actually just super pleasant to work with. And it was.
That's really funny. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
So that's all the questions we got from the audience. I just want to quickly thank all of the filmmakers and Kapena and Ian and Patty, who's not here tonight, but she's been such a huge supporter of this collaboration between LA Skins Fest and USC, and Stacy for the beautiful introduction. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight and sharing this evening with us.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone. Take care. Hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Mahalo, everyone.